Hi, friends. Welcome to another edition of the Lovecast. You are listening to episode 120, and this one's going to be titled, Great News. I have shingles. Let me say that again. You're listening to episode 120, and we're going to call this one Great News. I have a case of the shingles, or I have shingles. Yeah, my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Have you guys ever had shingles? Have you? Have you heard of them? Well, do a little Google search real quick, and if you don't know what shingles are, and you'll find out all about them. I have shingles currently as I'm recording this podcast, and it is actually really great news. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm not just trying to put a positive spin on something that's not positive. It actually really is positive, and I really believe I have them. One of the reasons I have them is to communicate this message, which is very, very important. But before I get into that, which I'm going to share a little bit about why I believe I have shingles and what I think it's communicating to myself and all of us. And I hope, my hope and desire with this podcast is that shingles, that my experience with shingles would actually benefit your life. Now, not in some kind of twisted, sadistic way, where my pain is your gain. I don't mean it quite like that, even though I think it does work that way. But because I think there's a lesson, a really important lesson for myself and for all of us in this, and I want to share it with you, okay? But before I get to that, I just want to say thank you guys to everybody who let me know about the last podcast I recorded, which was episode 119, which was all about, the reality that we become what we oppose. Sometimes I say, oh, that was the most important. Sometimes I'll say this is a really important podcast. I think in the last episode 119, I said that it was probably my most important podcast to date, and I still believe that, because it is vitally important that we understand that in order to transcend our current situation that we're experiencing this year on the planet, we cannot continue to operate with the same energy we have been, which is opposition energy. And that's, honestly, we've been conditioned to operate that way. It's how we're used to operating. It's how you turn on the news. It's all opposition. It's one party opposes the other party. One group of people is opposing another group of people. It's very standard. It's very normal, but we're never going to solve our most pressing problems in that energy. And even it really gets in the way of even our own personal relationships. So anyway, if you have not listened to that episode, it really is vitally important for your life on every level, especially in your intimate relationships, your personal relationships, your work relationships, family relationships. And then, of course, as a society on a collective basis, it's important for those relationships as well. So I would encourage you, if you haven't listened to episode 119, which is the one just before this one, You Become What You Oppose is the title for that one. Let me encourage you to listen to that, okay, when you get a chance. Now, with that said, I want to move on to today's episode and what it's about, which is the great news that I have shingles. Okay. Now, why do I say it's great news? Well, the more this podcast unfolds, you're going to find out why this is such good news. But I'll just start off with this. Okay. Everything that happens to us, and I've heard it put this way and I've adopted it, I believe it. Everything that happens to us in life can either be, and when I say everything, things, especially challenging things that we may typically look at as being not good or hard or difficult to go through. Okay. We could look at them as either being a fine, like, how when you get a citation, you got to pay a fine. Okay. We could look at things could either be a fine or they could be tuition. You know what tuition is, right? Yeah. Tuition is an investment into your education. So you pay tuition when you want to get educated, when you want to invest into your own development and growth. Yeah. So I'm looking at my shingles, as tuition, not a fine. And the reason it's a tuition for me, because it's an investment that I'm making. So it's I'm learning from it because I have approached it. I am approaching it with receptive arms and without and not from a place of self-judgment or loathing or resistance. So my shingles is actually not a problem to be resisted. This is tuition. So everything that difficult that happens to you is either a tuition or fine. If you don't learn, and here's what most people are paying fines in life because they're not actually paying attention to what's happening. They're resisting it. They're in the, they're upset about what's going on. They're fighting what's going on. They're trying to resist what's going on, but they're not actually accepting and embracing what's happening as being for them. And therefore they pay fines, but they don't ever pay tuition because they're not getting an education. Okay. So let's reverse that. Let's just say, hey, let's accept what's going on. So I accept the fact that I have a case of the shingles. I embrace it. I'm thankful for it. And I have learned something tremendous. Okay. So it is a tuition for me. All right. So let me just say this about the shingles. Okay. In case you don't know it, shingles is caused by a virus. Did you know that? It's caused by a virus. So I have a virus right now in my body. Now I have over 300 trillion viruses, but that's a whole other subject because the human body in our microbiome, we have it's estimated over 300 plus 300 million or 300 trillion, I should say, 300 trillion viruses on any given day. And I can get you those numbers if you'd like, where that comes from. That does come from some studies that have been done on the human microbiome. But we have over 300 trillion viruses on any given day. And I actually have a virus, and I've had it for a long time. Okay, and one of those viruses is the herpes zoster virus. The herpes zoster virus. The herpes zoster virus causes chickenpox in children. And if you've ever had the chickenpox, or you know anybody that's had the chickenpox, it's because it's due to the herpes zoster virus, and it can also manifest. So the herpes zoster virus can also manifest itself as shingles. As shingles, yes. And so shingles typically occurs in older folks, people who are older. So if you've had, typically speaking, if you've had the chickenpox, most folks don't get shingles because it's kind of like, your body has immunity to that virus. So even though you still have the virus in your body, you never actually get rid of that virus. The herpes zoster virus stays with you for life. So if you've had the chickenpox, you tend to not get shingles later because you have a sense of immunity to that. But it's possible to get shingles. And I've had the chickenpox as a child, and I just recently got shingles. So shingles is extremely uncomfortable, painful. It attacks the nervous system and inflames the nervous system, and that inflammation can start internally in your body, so you don't actually know what's going on, which was the case with me. I was experiencing some deep pain. I actually thought I was having a heart attack or something wrong with my heart. I actually thought that because it was so deep, like in my back, it felt like it was in my chest. It wasn't actually. So that was pretty concerning for me. And I figured out that it wasn't that. It wasn't my heart. Everything was fine there. But what it did is it was just very uncomfortable, kind of a burning pain internally, and then eventually it worked its way to like my external kind of muscles towards my skin, and then I started noticing these lesions on my skin, and they became it just looked like a rash, and then it just developed into extremely painful lesions that became like blisters, and very, very painful, and they just started to appear on my body. So, and it's just in a localized area. So it's nothing, thankfully it wasn't, too spread out all over my body. It was just in one localized area. But but you also have symptoms of having a virus. It can make you feel run down. It can take your energy out of you. Some people experience a fever, just like anything when the virus your body's resisting the virus or trying to deal with it. then you have those symptoms, and that was going on in my body. I could totally feel it. But very unique, very unique situation. Okay, so what happened? You know, some people would just say, yeah, that happens. It's normal to get to get sick and to get viruses. I actually don't believe it's normal, and I rarely get sick. I mean, I almost never get sick, and I'm not saying that in a prideful way. I just don't. It's very rare to get sick. So when I do get sick, I'm always listening. I'm always more attentive because I am curious as to what my body is trying to communicate, because I do believe health is normative. Health is, it's the natural kind of default setting, you know, and it's like the gravity leads us to health. But when something gets in the way of health, that's when we get sick. I'm firmly convinced of that, you know, and I deal with healthcare providers that operate from that vantage point. Many healthcare providers don't operate from that vantage point. The majority of healthcare providers operate from just very disease-focused, symptom-focused, and they actually assume that health is not normative. So it's extraordinary they're trying to get to health. They're actually not trying to get to health, and that's a whole other conversation. But that would, if that's kind of their paradigm, is that health is something is outside of you, that you can try to attain to, but it's really not, you know, not your default setting. So that's a very dangerous and false concept. So I'm very much a believer that health is your normative state. It is internal, and if you experience anything but health, it's because something is getting in the way of your normative state of health. And when you deal with that, then your normative state, you return to that state. Okay. And lots of science backs that up. It's been my experience, and I live by that. And I would encourage all of us to live by that. So the question is, why did I get shingles? Yeah, it's a question. So I don't ask that question in the sense of like, oh, what did I do wrong to get shingles? No. It's an opportunity to learn, to discover. So I asked that question. Okay, and I think it's really important that we ask good questions as opposed to not good questions. And so what is a good question? So if I were to ask the question of what did I do wrong, or what's wrong with me that I got the shingles, my understanding is that there's no real good answers that come to that, okay? Because the assumption is I did something wrong, or that there's something wrong with me. And that's a false assumption. So I've learned to ask better questions, okay? And so a better question I like to ask when my body is speaking, and it's speaking through shingles right now, I like to say, what are you saying to me? I'm listening. I'm ready to hear what you're saying. What are you saying? And I remember just asking that question with a very calm and sincere heart, and it just took, I mean, it was a matter of minutes, and it became extremely clear. And all of us have had those aha moments, right? Like where it's like somebody pulled the curtain back and you could see a fuller picture. It's called revelation, kind of the sense of, oh yeah, that's it. And then once you have a revelation, it's not even like, I mean, it goes beyond your rational mind. It's just something you deeply know at the level of being. And that's exactly what happened to me when I asked that question. It was a revelation, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's exactly it. So what I would like to do in today's podcast is communicate to you, or 3 thoughts, 3 components, 3 truths, if you want to call it that came to me as a result of asking that question about my shingles. And I'm actually, as soon as I kind of had that revelation of what these 3 things are, my shingles stopped hurting. Now, it's still painful. Don't get me wrong. It's still uncomfortable. But the pain, the quality of the pain, I was telling somebody this the other day, the quality of the pain almost instantly shifted. Yeah, the pain actually felt good as opposed to feeling bad. Is that weird? I know that might sound a little bit strange to you. But again, pain so for example, when you're sick and you're in pain, that pain does not feel good. No. But let's say you get surgery, okay? And there's a minor surgery. I've never actually had surgery, but I've heard it explained this way, and I buy it. So the surgery after pain, or the pain after surgery, okay, is vastly different than the pain before surgery. So the pain before surgery is usually due to some ailment or disease or problem. But sometimes when you get surgery after that, it's a different kind of pain. And a lot of it is psychological, but it's an understanding that the pain you feel after surgery is a healing pain. Your body's getting better. You're healing, right? It's almost exactly the same sensation. After I had this revelation of what my shingles is all about, the pain shifted from being this pain from a disease or a virus to being this pain of healing. And it's interesting that as soon as I had that revelation, my shingles started to get better. Actually, the lesions on my skin started to clear up. It's amazing. I'm telling you, it's incredible how the body works. Absolutely amazing. So they've been getting better and better every day since I've had this revelation. Okay? But even if they weren't, there'd be just more things to learn. But so I want to tell you. Can I do that? Can I tell you the three things, the three revelations, so to speak, that are coming from my shingles? Can I do that? Great, thank you. Okay, so, but before I share the first one, I need to give you a little bit of backdrop. Okay, so most of us have done cleanses, and I recommend cleanses on periodically to do cleanses, physical cleanses, because it's really good for your body. Because over time, your body builds up toxins in your body because of certain practices and just things in our environment and things we're eating and that kind of thing. So your body will build up toxins, and you won't really feel it or know it, but it just kind of over time just starts to weigh you down. And that's where a lot of sickness and disease can come from, is because you're carrying all these toxins. So cleanses can be really helpful in helping us get healthy, and to clear our system out. So I've actually recently done a cleanse, and I'm still actually doing part of a cleanse that involves celery juice, which is like a miracle juice. Okay. So if you know anything about the medical medium, you know that he's a big fan and he's, of celery juice, and that there's a lot of health benefits to drinking fresh celery juice that you juice every morning. And that's what I do. And so my wife and I have been doing that. She turned me onto that. My wife, Taylor, is a big fan of the medical medium. So she's been educating me on all of that. And so we've been doing this just cleanse involving, first thing in the morning, you drink water with a little bit of lemon juice, half a lemon and a little bit of honey, and that it kind of cleanses your liver. And then after about 30 or 45 minutes, you drink fresh celery juice that you juice every morning. And I'm telling you, that's a game changer. And I have felt so good on that. And I've done, and then of course, there's other components, the things that you're not eating during this time of cleanse that throughout the day that keep you, detoxing. So I've been doing that for the last couple of weeks, and I really have noticed a lot of benefits to that. Felt really good. But I've also done another kind of a cleanse as well. So if you follow me on social media, you will know that about a week ago, maybe longer now, I think it's a couple weeks ago, I actually I said, hey, I want to do an experiment. And one of the experiments that I wanted to do is I wanted to take a week and say, I'm not going to watch the media. I'm not going to watch the news or tune in to any what I call mainstream media, news sources that are talking, like Fox or CNN or MSNBC or NBC News or ABC News or CBS News or just New York Times and Washington Post and all these major media publications that are keeping the news cycle going. I decided that I was going to take a week and sit in, because my hypothesis is that the pandemic that's going on, a lot of people are in an uproar, and there's a lot of fear, and because of what the news and how the news is reporting things and keeping things stoked up. So I thought, if I take a week off from the media, I wonder if we'll even know that there's a pandemic. Again, just from what I know from history, there's been many pandemics or issues throughout the years that are much more lethal than this and much more widespread than this, but you just didn't hear about it because it was before social media. It was before, our connected world that we have now. And of course there wasn't the same kind of response. obviously we are living in unique times, so the media can really harness global information in a way now that was not possible a number of years ago. So my hypothesis was, if we unplugged from the media, would it affect how we feel about what's going on in the world today? Okay. So I did a cleanse. I did a cleanse for an entire week where I did not watch the media, and I felt great. Just like the physical cleanse I've been doing, drinking celery juice, water with some lemon in it, abstaining from certain other foods for this period of time. I felt great physically, but also emotionally, spiritually. I felt great because the energy I was putting into just being quote unquote informed by reading news articles. And I tend to be somebody who normally would consume the news, even though I've been telling people now, hey, let's limit our exposure to the media because it's toxic. I've been saying that for a while now, especially this year. I've tend to, and I didn't know I was doing this, but I was like, I'm a little different because I feel like I have healthy practices. I'm more grounded in nature, so I can stay abreast of the current events and stay informed. I'm okay. I felt that way. I just felt like, most people don't have those governors. Most people are not grounded. They don't have healthy practices in their life, and they're just consuming the media and on social media and hearing all the garbage that's going on there, people railing against the news, and people are in fear of the pandemic or in outrage by social injustice. And that's all you hear on a lot of people's social media feeds. And a lot of people are plugged into that, and it's affecting their energy, their mindset. It's very toxic. And the same folks are also ingesting media sources and watching the news, and it's affecting them. Most social media, because people are by and large unconscious, most people's social media feeds parrot the mainstream media. I've noticed that. So I just have recommended that people unplug from that this year. But I myself have kind of put myself in an exempt category because I always have felt that I had a better handle on it. So that makes sense? So I did this week cleanse, this cleanse from that. So I took my own advice and said, hey, I'm really going to unplug from the media, just like I'm recommending other people do. I'm really going to do it for this week, and I'm going to see how I feel. So I did it for a week, and I felt great. Just right along with my physical cleanse I was doing. I felt great. And guess what happened? Yeah. Okay, so before I tell you what happened, if you've ever done a cleanse, you know what I'm saying here. When you do a cleanse, like a food cleanse, let's say you're going to cut out sugar, processed sugar, or dairy, or meat, or whatever it is that you're going to cut out and cleanse from, if you do, or gluten, a lot of people, have want to cut out gluten to see how they feel without any, kind of gluten in their diet. So a lot of people will do that for a period of time, 30 days, 2 weeks, a week, whatever. And then once they go back to it, and this is very common, when people do a cleanse and then go back to what they were eating before, the same things they've always eaten their whole life, when they go back to it after a cleanse, it usually makes them sick. Yeah, it makes them sick. Why? Because your body is clean and is very sensitive to unhealth and toxin. Yeah, so people will get sick. So it's really interesting because a lot of people, this can throw people for a loop sometimes. Because you would think if after a cleanse you would be more healthy, which you are. So that a lot of folks will think, well, then I'll have a higher tolerance for toxins. I won't get sick less often. And that is true overall, but you have less, and this is what most people don't know, after a cleanse, after you get healthy, you have less tolerance for unhealth. You have less tolerance for the toxins. So as soon as you put that toxin in your body, you feel it, and it feels gross. It causes sickness. It causes disruption in your body immediately because you're clean and you're more in tune with health. But before the cleanse, most of us are chronically toxic, and we've grown accustomed to, we don't even know it. So our body has all this toxins, and you can't, so when you could eat something, some junk food, and it doesn't really affect you. You can just metabolize it, or you can just pack it away somewhere, and you don't really feel the negative effects of it because it's kind of normative to your state. And it's still just as toxic for you. You're kind of numb to it because you're desensitized to it, right? That's what happens when you eat a lot of garbage and you put a lot of garbage in your body. You don't even know it. You can't even feel it because you're so toxic. But once you cleanse yourself of those toxins and then you go back to those toxic foods, you can feel it immediately. Well, yeah, you see where I'm going with this, right? Yeah, you see where I'm going with this, right? I did a week and I cleansed myself of the toxins that come from the mainstream media. Yeah, I cleansed from the media. And after my week of cleansing was over, guess what I did? Yeah, I went back to the media the way I normally did, just because I thought, oh yeah, I can handle it. I'm going back to it. And guess what happened? I got the shingles. Totally. I got the shingles. Now, the shingles comes from a virus. Okay? The shingles comes from a virus. I've had that same virus in my body for years. I've literally had it for years. So I didn't get a new virus. I've had the same virus. But when you get the shingles is a result of having a compromised immune system. Yeah. So when your immune system is compromised, you will be susceptible to adverse reactions to certain viruses. It's a fact. So, and this is proof. I have shingles not because I got a new virus, because my body's immune system was weakened to the point where I got this virus. Where the virus affected me and manifested itself as shingles. And that's what causes shingles, is when your immune system, it's not just the virus, it's when your immune system is not capable of handling that virus. And that caused the symptoms. So the question is, what weakened my immune system? Yeah, we know what weakens immune systems. Stress, toxic stress, toxicity from stressful environments. We know it's not the only thing that weakens immune systems. Toxins in your body through food and environment can also weaken your immune system, but stress and emotional health play a huge part in that. So you see where I'm going with this, okay? So my first point, and I told you I was going to have 3 kind of revelations that I'm learning from my case with the shingles, okay? So this is the first one. The first point I want to make with you is this, that first of all, I became very sensitive to the media because after my cleanse. But sensitivity, and here's the first point, the sensitivity is actually a sign of health. It's actually a sign of health. So most people are desensitized and they think that it's a sign of health that things don't affect them. But I'll actually go and I'm going to flip that a little bit when it comes to this. If you can eat a lot of junk food and it doesn't affect you, it's because your body is desensitized, not because you're healthy. It's because your body is desensitized to the toxins. So it's poisoning you just as much as it poisons anybody, but you're not even aware of it. And usually this is why people become like all of a sudden they get blindsided with a major chronic illness that they didn't even see coming, because they've been so desensitized to toxins in their body that, this has been building, it takes a long time to get to that level. But we've been so desensitized from these toxins that, that these things build over time because we're not sensitive. But when you do a cleanse and you get clean, you become very sensitive to anything that's not from health, that's not normative. So guess what? Sensitivity is a sign of health. That's my first point I want to make to you. And that's what I learned from this. Like, oh my goodness, I did a 1 week cleanse from the mainstream media. And the moment I go, and I could feel it. As soon as I started reading those articles again and listening to those news sites, I actually did feel it. I could feel it in my body. It felt like tension. It felt there's some fear. There's a little bit of anxiousness there. And I thought, obviously it just, I was more sensitive to it internally, but it actually weakened. And we know this. There's so many studies. It's scientifically proven that stress will imbalance and compromise your immune system. So when your immune system's compromised, your microbiome, which is made up of over 300 trillion viruses on a good day and bacteria, things get out of balance when your immune system is not keeping things in balance. So they'll get out of balance, and then one of those viruses will then become will cause problems because they're not being held in check. See, the herpes zoster virus that causes chickenpox or shingles it's in your body all the time. I mean, it's in most people carry that because they've had the chickenpox. But if your immune system gets out of whack, you'll get the shingles. So the media, my exposure to the media after a cleanse from it, immediately threw off my immune system. Guys, this isn't just happening to me. This is happening to us across the board collectively. It is our society, the immune system of our society is being compromised on a daily basis by the media. I kid you not. There's real power in suggestion. Repetitive messages are very suggestive, and they actually factor very heavily in our programming, very heavily in our subconscious scripts, which have a direct role in our immune system. And this is why we are seeing people get sick and have adverse reactions to this virus. It's one of the reasons, the placebo effect. It's very real. I'm not saying the virus isn't real and doesn't affect people, but the severity of it would be much less. I'm convinced of that if we didn't have this media doing all this suggesting for us constantly. It's toxic. And a lot of us are just desensitized to it. We don't realize how toxic it is, but it's even though you're maybe desensitized, it's just as toxic, and it's doing a number on your system, on your physical body. Just watching the news is creating disease in your body. It's crazy. This is so clear to me. So I realized, oh my gosh, I'm much more sensitive after the media cleanse. I'm much more sensitive to toxic media sources than I was before the cleanse. So sensitivity is actually a sign of health. Being desensitized to toxins is actually a sign of unhealth. So this shingles is showing up in my body to show me, to point me to the fact that I've actually been made much more healthy, to the point that I noticed the toxic nature of the media immediately. It didn't take me that long. And my body's responding, telling me that is not health. Turn it off. You're affecting the immune system. Yeah, it just blew me away. I see it now clearer than I've seen it in a long time. Sensitivity is a sign of health. That's the first point. Second point I want to make that my shingles is teaching me, okay, is that number 2, every thought is metabolized. Every thought is metabolized at some level. So when you think about something, when you have a thought, if you engage a thought that tends to be fearful, or it's, uncertain in some way, or if it's about, something you have no control over, that's going to create a fear response in your body. And that thought actually, and of course I don't want to get off into epigenetics, but what we know from the science of epigenetics is that your thoughts interact with your microbiome. Yes. Your microbiome, that's made up of 300 plus trillion viruses and billions of bacteria on a daily basis, your microbiome is made up of it. Our bodies are an ecosystem of viruses and bacteria, and it's vital. It actually keeps us alive. So your microbiome, if it's unhealthy, will actually play a role. So to give you a quick, just snapshot of what epigenetics are, is that you're not about. So when you look at your genetic potential, 2% comes from your predetermined genetics from your family. Okay, so if you have a predisposition to certain diseases, cancer, diabetes, whatever, that will be in that 2%. The other 98% of your genes, they used to call it junk DNA because they didn't understand what it did. But that 98% is it's like a switchboard. So basically, those things can be switched on or off. So disease potential, things that you may end up doing. There's so much potential locked up in your DNA, 98% of it, but it's a switchboard. Certain things switch them on, certain things switch them off. And we have discovered, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that your literal thoughts, the thoughts you engage with at a conscious level, interact with your microbiome in your gut, which then have the potential to switch certain components in your DNA on or off. It's fascinating. Again, I'm just giving you a very, very quick overview. There's so much more, we could get much more in depth with that. And there's many, many great books out there on it. If you want to educate yourself, just let me know and I'll point you in that direction. But basically your thoughts affect your microbiome, which then affect which of these genes get switched on and off. So disease potential can be switched on or can be switched off. And even, things that you want to grow in and develop can be switched on or off based on your thoughts. So I say that to say every thought is metabolized. Okay. And this is why stress or toxins can play a huge role on your immune system. So like for me, I do a cleanse from the media and then I'll literally go right back to it and boom, it starts interacting with my microbiome and it's throwing my immune system is out of balance. And boom, a virus I've had in my body, so the herpes zoster virus is a part of the 300 plus trillion viruses that already live in my body. And it caused that virus to become, because my immune system was weakened, it caused that virus to get out of balance because it's normally in balance. And now I had an outbreak of the shingles from a virus I've had my whole life. It's amazing. Direct connection to my immune system becoming weakened. And that immune system was weakened by exposure to the media. Crazy, isn't it? Crazy. So again, the herpes zoster virus is not a problem. So if I went to a doctor and say, hey, look, I got the shingles, they would prescribe me with antiviral medication, which can help, to get it back under control. I get that. But that's actually that's not the problem. The virus isn't the problem. Isn't that crazy? The virus is not the problem. I've had that virus my whole life. It's never been a problem until now. It's because my immune system got affected. It could not keep that. So the microbiome is an I'm trying to say that word, intricate balance of viruses and bacteria operating together to keep things in a balanced state. So it's really important that you keep it balanced and robust, and your immune system plays a role in keeping things from getting out of control. It's kind of like, in nature, if you have too many of one species, it kind of gets in the way and overtakes another species and creates imbalance. So when nature is operating properly, everything is in its proper ecosystem and in very good balance that keeps life sustained. Okay, it's the same thing in your microbiome. Yeah, it's the same thing in your microbiome. So when one of those viruses gets out of balance, then your body will then see it as a threat and start attacking it, and that's where you'll have the problem. So the shingles is your body's attempt to start fighting that virus, which it's an inflammatory problem. Okay, so doctors, if you go to a doctor to have shingles treated, they'll give you antiviral medication, sometimes anti-inflammatory medication, but it doesn't get to the root of it because the virus is. So you can attack the virus all you want, and maybe that will help you with the symptoms, but ultimately for long-term health and sustainable health, you need to get your immune system back in order. Does that make sense? So every thought at some level is metabolized because of how it interacts with our microbiome. It's crazy. I could say a lot more about that, but also neurons in your brain are formed based around thought. So the more you think a certain thought, the easier it is to think a certain thought because it's actually creating thought trees in your brain. It's incredible. So my third point, okay, and I want to touch on that a little bit more in my third point, but my third point I want to make is our thoughts and conversations contribute, okay, to the overall health or disease of the planet, okay? So let's just take it back down to the individual basis for a moment. Let's say you have a negative thought, okay? That negative thought, let's say you engage with that negative thought in your mind. So it's interacting, it's fighting. So there's neurological activity that you're literally, It's firing. Your brain is firing around certain thoughts, which causes these synapses between one neuron to another neuron. It causes those synapses, so there's a little, to grow and to strengthen. That's why if you think about a thought or a memory enough, that memory will stay fresh in your mind because there's actual science behind it, because you're strengthening the neurons and those synapses between those neurons that keep that thought tree alive. Okay. And that's why memories can seem very fresh the more you think about them. But let's say there's a memory that you stop thinking about and you stop dwelling on. It gets foggy over time, right? It becomes real faint. Neurologically, the reason for that is because those synapses are, over time, they degrade. And that's why it can be harder to remember somebody's name that you don't think about often, or remember a certain memory that you haven't thought about often, because they start to fade away, okay? So whatever you think about on a regular, consistent basis, you are actually building neurologic tree. Like you can actually see it on the MRI. Your brain is made up of these trees, basically, of neurons and connections, and that they develop in the brain and they go throughout the body. And you can strengthen them and reshape your brain actually through certain conscious thought patterns. So that's why you've heard these, the adage probably that whatever you do after 21 days, you can form a new habit. Well, there's a neurologic reason for that. It has to do with this thing called neuroplasticity. You can literally, your brain is basically plastic. It can be molded. It only takes about 21 days to start to reshape these neural networks through consistent, conscious intention to rethinking certain things. That's why in my coaching work with my clients, I adopt new practices where they're doing things on a daily basis to reshape that neural network. So it's all about neuroplasticity. Okay, it's very powerful. It works. So if a thought can create a thought tree in the brain that can be seen on the MRI, which is affecting our entire structure, so the same is true on a macro basis. The same is true macroly. So there's a saying in Eastern medicine, as is the micro, so is the macro. As is the atom, so is the universe. So if you want to know how the entire world works, you can actually see a snapshot of that in your own body. So if the summation of our thoughts are metabolized in our body, and it shows up in our body collectively, the same is happening on a collective basis with all of humanity. Does that make sense? So each person is like a thought. It's like a thought. It's like a thought tree. Each person is like a thought tree. So if you think about the brain of humanity, the global consciousness, the global brain of humanity, it's like a collection of all these thought trees put together. And each person represents a thought tree. So again, if you want to have a healthy thought life and healthy brain, basically filled with all these neural networks of positive abilities to think positively and to have all these different, like that's why negative folks it's easier to think negatively, because the neural network in their brain has been conditioned to think that way, and positive thought trees have not been developed because they don't think about positive thoughts very often. It's the same thing with global consciousness. Okay. So if you want to strengthen global consciousness, you have to strengthen the thought trees, and each one of us are contributing. Each one of us are actively contributing to the overall health or disease of the planet by how we operate. And that's what I'm learning, It's another thing that I'm learning through this entire situation. So as my body functions, so does the entire world, the global consciousness of the world. So if we want to heal our world of the disease that it's suffering from, it starts in the same way. It starts with individual health, okay? A cleanse. Yeah, you start cutting out the toxins. And as we cut out those toxins, we become much more sensitive to health. Yeah. And we become very sensitive to what we're metabolizing in our body. So if thoughts are literally metabolized, they make their way into thoughts, they form thought trees. They start to interact, there's neurons interact with our microbiome, which then turn on certain genetic potentials, good or negative, positive or negative. And then we eventually metabolize in our body, our thoughts. This is why sometimes you will see people age very quickly. And we've all seen presidents, right? So you see their pictures, and it's very common. You see their picture when they first go into office, they look very young, or a lot younger than they did when they leave office. Why? Because there's a lot of stress. And so the stress in that job will actually show up in their body, and they'll metabolize that. So we've all seen that. When people go through stress, they age much more quickly. Why? Because they're metabolizing their thoughts. If you've ever seen people who look younger, maybe who don't have such a, they age really well. They're not sick very often. Their immune systems are better. Why? Because they're metabolizing their thoughts. Yeah. It's just the way it works. So this is an incredible opportunity for us. I really believe to do a cleanse. And that would be my encouragement. So, a few weeks ago I said, hey, let's do an experiment. Let's take 1 week, no media. Let's see how it affects us. Well, due to my shingles, I'm going to go back to that as a new way of life. I'm not worried about not being informed because, you just live your life. You get very conscious to yourself. You work on, do your work in the world, and the information you need will come to you. So I don't need to be going to toxic sources, which is what I would consider our media apparatus. I wish it wasn't that way, because journalism is a very important profession, but it's not. The institution of it doesn't exist yet for it to be a healthy thing in our society just yet. So we're going to need some upheaval and institutional change at the media level for that to happen. But that's a whole other conversation. Those days are coming. I believe that. However, right now, it's such a toxic thing that I would just encourage, this is what I'm going to do. And I would encourage us to really consider this, especially this year, that this is a year to come home. Yeah, to do a cleanse. To take a break from the things that we've been ingesting that are toxic, so that we can learn what it is to be at home within ourselves. The things that have been distracting us, the repetitive kind of obsessive compulsive kind of behaviors that we do, that we've been doing for years. I think this is a good time to put those on hold, to learn what it is to come home to self, to meditate. Yeah, to meditate, to breathe. Do you have a meditation practice? Do you? Do you feel good about it? If not, this is a time to start doing some research about what does it look like for me to adopt a healthy meditative practice on a daily basis. It's one of the first things I start to implement with my coaching clients is I help them start getting into those rhythms. Have a meditation practice, because why? You will not get to know yourself without it. And if you don't get to know yourself, you can never achieve the life you were destined to live, nor can you heal from the obsessive behaviors and traumas and anxiety that you've been dealing with. You can't there's no way around that but coming home to self, where that pain is, and facing it and working through it and having the tools to work through it. It's vital for your health, for all of our health. But as we become healthy as people, the world becomes healthy. As we grow, the world grows. As we heal, the world heals. This is also true for our family and our loved ones. You don't have to change anybody. You just get healthy yourself, and everybody that's connected to you will grow with you. It's how it works. Isn't that good news? Yeah. So we need to become much more sensitive. Sensitivity is a sign of health. How do you do that? Through detox. That's what my shingles is showing me. Number 2, we need to realize that every thought is metabolized. The virus that caused my shingles was not a problem. It was in my body the whole time, but my immune system was imbalanced because of my ingesting of toxins from the media, specifically in this case. And number 3, our thoughts and conversations are actually kind of like a neural network in the global brain. Our thoughts and conversations contribute to the overall health or disease of the planet. So what you think on a daily basis is affecting the whole world. How you behave on a daily basis is affecting the whole world, whether you know it or not. You could live out in the middle of the woods and be connected to no other human being. You are connected by default through existence. Your consciousness is actually connected to other people's consciousness, whether you know it or not. So it's imperative that you and I become healthy. Does that make sense? I hope this makes sense. So my shingles is actually good news because it's showing me how sensitive I have become to toxic sources that can affect my immune system. And it's a lesson I'm learning very, very, very clearly, and I'm thankful for it. So I wanted to share that with you. I hope this has been helpful. Guys, thank you for tuning in. If you would like some more information from me, I would love for you to be a part of my mailing list. So if you're not on my mailing list, go to my website, which is jamaljavanji.com. You just scroll to the bottom and put your email address in there, click submit. You'll get on my mailing list. But I'm also doing some really important work this year in a Facebook group that's free, totally free. I share some great information, but I'm also we're also doing a lot of work around helping people uproot from the poverty mindset. And I've done a workshop around that, and I'm going to be doing another one very soon. So I share that information in that Facebook group. I'd love for you to be part of that. It's totally free for you to be part of that group, the Facebook group, and you'll hear about the workshop and other things I'll be doing later this year. But I also do live presentations and just share important information in that group. And so if you'd like to be part of that, just do a search for Uprooting from the Poverty Mindset on Facebook. You can request to join. You have to answer about 3 questions, and you can be part of that. All right. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, I always love to hear comments from listeners. It helps me know that you're engaging and that this is beneficial, or, maybe you have agreement or disagreement, or just need some more further clarification on some things. Conversations are vitally important for that. So send me an email, jamal@jamaljavanji.com, or look me up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and interact with me there. Let me know that you listened to this and how it came across to you, and just comments or thoughts or questions that you may have as a result of some of the things I shared here. Always love to hear from the listeners. And please rate us and review us on iTunes as well. That really helps the podcast. And we'll go from there. All right. I hope this has been helpful. Guys, thank you for listening. And until next time, take care.